Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. I'm a little later for a couple of minutes. Last preparations. I just add one more news to the news segment. Today is, of course, 18th of July. Now it's 11 o'clock, 4 past 11 in the morning, Moscow time, and I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments. And I hope you will find this episode informative and useful. Before I start with new segment itself, let me just remind you, dear friends, that this project, my programs exist only as long as I have your support, community support. And if you like my work, if you want to see further development of this project, please consider to support. You can do it through several means. You can donate to the project through PayPal or Boosty platforms. You can use also crypto for support. In addition, obviously, you can subscribe to my Patreon page or page on Boosty, where I have extra content on regular basis. And during the live streams, because my channel is monetized on Rumble, you can use a round or super chat feature on Rumble to support my work and same time to highlight any topic you want. And you can become a premium subscriber on Rumble. This is also an option. All the links, all the addresses under this video in description box, and after stream I will pin a comment with the links. That's been said, dear friends, let's start now. New segment, and in case you have not watched my yesterday's evening stream, dear friends, I recommend to do so, because I'm not going to repeat all the news from yesterday's second update, but I will pay attention to some of the news, because it's worth our attention, I believe. And well, let's start now. And let's start with this report from RIA Novosti, which is based on Russian Defense Ministry's latest update, that overnight, early hours of this morning, air defense systems on duty intercepted 73 drones that were launched by Kyiv regime with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. I can give you specifics on that. 31 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 17 drones over the Oryol region, excuse me, 10 drones over the Moscow region. And dear friends, if you notice, Kyiv regime accelerated its strikes towards Moscow. And yesterday I reported that Kyiv regime even tried, Kyiv regime, NATO, they even tried to target St. Petersburg, right? So 10 drones were, and this is happening days after Trump allegedly demanded from Zelensky's regime to strike Moscow. There was that kind of conversation, allegedly, based on media reports, when Trump last time spoke to Zelensky on 4th of July, that was, I believe. 4 drones were intercepted over the Crimea, 3 drones over the waters of Azov Sea, 2 each over the Smolensk and Nizhny Novgorod regions, 1 each over the Belgorod, Kaluga, and Voronezh regions, as well as over the Black Sea. Relatively large-scale attempt of Kyiv regime and NATO to strike deep into Russian territory, but Russian air defense systems, as always, by the way, did manage to intercept at least vast majority of the drones. Maybe 1 or 2 did manage to bypass air defense systems, and if that is the case, then later on, most likely, we will have additional information on that, and I will share this information on my Telegram and Twitter X pages in next update. TASS news agency is also reporting that Russian armed forces liberated 3 settlements in the zone of 3 more settlements in the zone of special military operations. So Russian troops have liberated Degtyarnoye in the Kharkov region, Kamenskoye in the Zaporozhye region, which is a big deal, by the way, and the settlement of Popov Yar in the Donetsk People's Republic. Let me show you on the map these directions, by the way. This is right on the border with Russian Federation, is Degtyarnoye settlement in the Kharkov region, and Russian troops are not just liberated settlement itself, but also moved forward, and are approaching Kruglaye settlement at this point. Most likely Kruglaye and Zemlyanki will be next area where we will see battles in this direction. Also, Popov Yar settlement is is here, by the way. This is Popovyar, and now battles are taking place for Poltavka settlement. This is in middle of basically Pokrovsk-Mirnograd, between Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration and Konstantinovka. So Russian troops are on daily basis improving their positions in this bulge area, basically, that divides Kiev regime's forces in these two pockets, one being Konstantinovka and another Pokrovsk-Mirnograd, and eventually both these pockets will be encircled, by the way. Things definitely are developing in that direction. And when it comes to third settlement, Kamenskaya, this is the Kamenskaya, by the way, in Zaporozhye region, right next to this water reservoir, Kakhovka water reservoir. And this is a big deal because this settlement was a major defense line of the Kiev regime in this direction. And lately, in last couple of weeks, we did see activization of the Russian troops in Kamenskaya area. And well, now entire settlement is under Russian control, and soon we should expect battles to begin in the Plavny area and also in Stepnogorsk direction. But when it comes to Zaporozhye sector, I think it is a possibility. Obviously, I don't know what kind of plans Russian Defense Ministry has, but I think it is a possibility that Russian troops will also activate their operations significantly in Gulyai Pole and Orekhov directions. So Zaporozhye direction, Zaporozhye sector soon probably will become very hot, very hot. Let's continue with some more news now. And well, TASS news agency is reporting that during the Russian local-scale offensive operations to reach Dnipropetrovsk region on the southern western flank of Pokrovsk-Mirnograd, unit of Kiev regime's forces, up to a platoon, by the way, made the right decision and surrendered. So let me give you little details on that. A new group of Ukrainian servicemen surrendered on the border with the DPR and Dnipropetrovsk region, according to TASS news agency. Among those who surrendered were soldiers from 141st Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. According to servicemen that surrendered, there was not enough room for them in the combat vehicles in which the rest of their comrades escaped. And these guys been left, by the way, up to platoon, which is, at least dozen of soldiers, by the way, 24 maybe. They were just left behind. I mean, what is this, man? What is this? And whoever was in charge of this group talked the sense to others. I guess they contacted the Russian side and organized safe surrender. I mean, most correct decision that a commander of this unit would ever made, right? He saved his own life and also lives of his comrades, because why should they all die for geopolitical agenda of the West or the interests of terrorist, corrupt regime of Zelensky? It makes no sense, right? Also, this report, by the way, I spoke about it in yesterday's second update, but this is important, so worth to repeat. TASS news agency is reporting that Russia plans to hand over 3,000 bodies of Ukrainian armed forces soldiers to Kiev regime, as Russian president promised. Humanitarian activity in this direction continues, and yesterday was first phase of the transfer of the bodies of killed Ukrainian military personnel, and 1,000 bodies were transferred to Kiev regime. According to reports, 19 bodies of killed Russian soldiers were also transferred to Russian side in upcoming days, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but definitely in short time. Most likely Russian side will transfer 2,000 bodies, another 2,000 bodies of the Kiev regime's military personnel. And I remind you, dear friends, that according to Western media outlets, Russia, if this process, this humanitarian process continues, Russia might transfer to Kiev regime side from 40 to 60,000 bodies of the Kyiv regime's forces. At least some result, some significant, I will even say, result from Istanbul talks that almost being completely derailed by now as a result of inadequate activity, behavior of the Kyiv regime and its Western backers. But at least some positivity clearly is there in humanitarian terms. Bodies of killed military personnel was exchanged. Also, agreement was reached about exchange of POWs, and their process continues, by the way. And significant number of POWs were exchanged. I was reporting about it, and also there is agreement in place that heavily wounded POWs should be exchanged in a very short time. RIA Novosti is also reporting that, well, I just mentioned Istanbul talks, isn't it? And there was a speculation on a matter of who will lead the Ukrainian delegation if third round of Istanbul talks take place. And there was a speculations because Umerov, who was heading Ukrainian delegation, was released from position of defense minister. And there was speculations what is going to happen with this person. According to some reports, Zelensky was planning to appoint him as an ambassador of Ukraine, of Kyiv regime, into US. It did not work, and allegedly Washington rejected this candidacy of Umerov because of his corruption and some dodgy dealings. Entire his family is living in some mansion in Florida, in US. According to reports. So, Washington was not happy with this personality. And now we have this report that Umerov was appointed as a secretary of the National Security and Defense Council. So, theoretically speaking, he's still an official in Kyiv-controlled territory and can lead delegation again, although we might see some changes in this regards also. And some other personality might be appointed as a head of Ukrainian delegation, although it is not fact that a third round of talks will even take place, because as I already said, the Kyiv regime and its Western backers are quite effectively derailing these talks. RT is also reporting that EU country moves to sanction Ukrainian military officials. So Hungary, by the way, that has very tense relationships with Kyiv regime, has filed their motion with the EU to sanction 3 Ukrainian officials. Budapest deems responsible for forced mobilization. Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó has announced that Budapest took the step following an incident in which Ukrainian draft officers are alleged to have fatally beaten a Hungarian citizen during this forceful mobilization. And so Hungary seems like Hungary is not waiting until Brussels will make any decision on the matter, and Hungary itself will sanction number of high-ranking Ukrainian military personnel. And dear friends, I said in my previous updates quite a number of times that I personally have no doubts that eventually Ukraine will undergo full-scale disintegration, and the western parts of Ukraine will end up being claimed by its Western neighbors. In some 70% of Western Ukraine eventually will become part of Poland, I believe. Romania will take some parts, and Hungary too. And Hungary most likely will reclaim Transcarpathia region, where this killing of ethnic Hungarian happened, citizen of Hungary and Ukraine, when he was beaten by these so-called recruitment officers of the Kyiv regime to the death. Right, and I'm quite sure Hungarian militaries, Hungarian security services already have plans in place for rapid deployment of forces in the Transcarpathia region to secure basically entire that area and make claim on that territory. Right, so it's only a matter of time. By the way, it's only a matter of time at this point, and Hungary will make its moves, as it will be done by Poland and Romania too. Rest of the territory, of course, will either join completely Russian Federation, or if Kyiv and few surrounding regions will maintain status of Ukraine only in a sphere of Russian influence, completely free from everything, all negativity that comes from the West, only in sphere of Russian influence. We will see that, but Ukraine, as we knew it, this former Soviet republic, is not going to exist for longer, right? It not really exists already because Ukraine, when Soviet Union collapsed, and Ukraine now, it's like two different universes, right? RT is also reporting that, well, Zelensky is becoming more authoritarian, according to Financial Times. So Western publications, by the way, more often are begun to criticize Zelensky now, right? And this is not a random stuff. I believe there is certain plans in place on part of Washington and part of London to replace this personality. And I don't know when final decision will be made about fate of Zelensky, but we are getting closer to that point. And that's why quite often nowadays Western so-called media is publishing some critical articles about Zelensky and his inner circle, right? So Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky is facing growing accusations of authoritarianism, according to Financial Times, one of the big names in Western propaganda. The outlet has cited their opposition politicians, civil society leaders, and their diplomats as saying that Zelensky and his aides are using extraordinary powers granted under the martial law in force since the escalation of the conflict with Russia to sideline critics, muzzle civil society leaders, and consolidate control. Earlier this month, masked operatives raided the homes of prominent anti-corruption activists Vitaly Shabunin and the former infrastructure minister Alexander Kubakov. All true authorities claim their search was part of ongoing corruption probes. Both men described the actions as politically motivated and aimed at their intimidating critics of Zelensky's inner circle. They also denied the charges. And by the way, it's not just Zelensky that is trying, and his inner circle that tries to increase their power, but there is a civil war inside, isn't it? SBU is fighting defense ministry, so-called defense ministry of the Ukraine, and main intelligence directorate, and vice versa. They are killing each other, literally. They are killing each other, right? And they blame casualties on the Russian side, right? But they clearly are in a sort of a civil war. They're fighting for a better piece of cake when it comes to Ukraine. And by the way, it's quite a cake, isn't it? Because we should keep in mind that billions and billions of dollars and euros have been stolen, by the way, by these elements, right? So it's something worth for them to fight, because they are playing with billions, tens of billions even. Nothing to be said about fight to control whatever is left from economy, right, of Ukraine. And situation will only escalate, that's for sure. But it is interesting. It is interesting that more and more big names are criticizing Zelensky, which is definitely an indicator that London, which is a puppet master now of Zelensky, is very close to final decision to replace Zelensky with Zaluzhny, I guess. That's why they talk Zaluzhny in UK to secure him, right? And they force Zelensky to appoint Zaluzhny, former head of Ukraine's general staff, as ambassador in that island nation. Anyways, let's continue, dear friends. And well, we have breaking news, sort of. I spoke about this topic yesterday in the second update, and I think it is definitely worth our attention. So, U.S. general threatens to wipe Kaliningrad region off the face of the earth. I mean, headline itself says it all, isn't it? That U.S. general threatens to wipe Kaliningrad region off the face of the earth. And you tell me, dear friends, what the hell is wrong with the Western political and military leadership that they are coming up with such statements? I don't know. Let's go through details here. The commander of the US Army in Europe and Africa, Christopher Donahue, said that NATO has the ability to destroy the Kaliningrad region in a record time. Donahue said the US military and its NATO allies have their capability to quickly destroy the Kaliningrad region. Defense News reports on the matter. Kaliningrad is about 75 kilometers wide and they're surrounded on all sides by NATO, he said, and their army, US Army and its allies are now able to wipe this enclave off the face of the earth at a speed that has never been seen before. Wow. Wow. So this is acting general, by the way. This is not a retired general that become a commentator in some Western media on Fox or MSNBC or I don't know, BBC or something. When we are seeing quite a number of these high-ranking military officials are commenting some stuff and making some crazy statements, but they are retired generals, right? Or high-ranking officers. This one is acting general, right? He is a commander of U.S. Army in Europe and Africa, and he is saying that well, they're gonna wipe out Kaliningrad region. He's threatening basically to kill hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens while wiping out this region. This is insane, by the way. This is insane. I was thinking that Moscow would react on this extremely provocative statement from US general. But for now, before I start this live stream, by the way, I was checking media outlets and there was no official comment from Kremlin or from foreign ministry. At least main media outlets didn't report nothing about it. But during the day, probably we will have some reaction from Russian officials, because this is not okay, Bob. This is definitely not okay when acting general is threatening to wipe out a Russian region. This is not okay because if these people, and it is clearly the case, are this delusional that they think they can, with impunity, threaten Russia, threaten hundreds of thousands of lives, potentially millions of lives of the Russian citizens, if they think they can, with impunity, actually act on these threats and attack directly, openly Russian Federation, then this is too dangerous, isn't it? Because maybe they think Russia would not respond, or Russia would not use whatever force is necessary to defend itself, but they are mistaken, isn't it? Attack of US or any other NATO member state on Russian Federation, being Kaliningrad region or anywhere else, will obviously trigger Russia to use all the necessary force, including nuclear weapons, right? And that is potentially end of humanity. We're not going to sit around and watch how NATO is destroying us, right? We're going to fight back. And even though I did not see any official statements from foreign ministry or Kremlin at this point about the statement of US general, we have this reaction from Russian MP. So NATO attack on Russia's Baltic exclave of Kaliningrad will trigger an adequate response from Russia, including measures stipulated by its nuclear doctrine, said Leonid Slutsky, the chairman of the International Affairs Committee of the Russia State Duma, low house of parliament. So, I mean, understandable statement from a Russian MP. Of course, any attack on Kaliningrad region or any other region by US or by any other NATO member state will trigger will trigger nuclear response from Russia. Let's be, let's say it as it is, right? Russia will respond with nuclear weapons. Because I believe a number of high-ranking Russian officials said on a couple of occasions that war with NATO, if collective West will provoke such development, would not be conducted only with conventional weapons, because obviously Russia will be in disadvantageous position in that case, right? Because on one side we are talking about a couple of dozen of countries, right, that have 10 times more military budget than Russia, 3-4 times more military personnel than Russia, more military equipment than Russia, and more everything, by the way. Only when it comes to nuclear weapons, there is some balance there. But even then, in terms of nuclear weapons, collective West, I mean, NATO, US, UK, and France combined have more nuclear weapons than Russia. Although, if we take single countries, then yes, Russia have more nuclear weapons than US, for example, right? But what I want to highlight by saying by this is that Russia would not conduct operations only with conventional weapons if NATO attacks us, because we will be in a very disadvantageous position. We had to use nuclear weapons in that case, right? So, by the way, as I said yesterday in the second update, in second live stream, if there was any time to wake up for the Western societies, it is that time was yesterday, for sure. But I mean, better they wake up today, man, because tomorrow might never came. If globalists, if Western ruling class continues act this irresponsibly, tomorrow may just never came. And on topic of escalation by the West, we have also this report that Kyiv will soon receive long-range systems, including through industrial cooperation, according to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. He made this statement during the joint press conference with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London. And when such statements are made that soon, in a couple of days' time, couple of weeks' time, Kyiv regime will receive long-range weapon systems, and they are calling it, by the way, to fool. I don't know who they want to fool, but they think they can fool whole world, by the way, while saying that these long-range weapon systems will end up in hands of Kyiv regime through industrial cooperation. So they want to divert attention from their involvement, right? They don't want to say that it's Germany that's sending Taurus missiles, right? Taurus long-range cruise missiles. They don't want to say that, right? They are two cowards, by the way. So they are coming up with this delusional statement that this is industrial cooperation, that as a result of which Kyiv regime soon gonna have these long-range weapons. Of course, it's gonna be German weapons, by the way. It's gonna be German weapons, no doubts about that. They might disassemble Taurus missiles in Germany and then reassemble somewhere in Western Ukraine, and they might call it a Ukrainian missile now, but Russian officials were very clear. This trick would not work, and Russia will consider any strikes with German long-range weapon systems as Germany's direct involvement in this conflict. And I know, dear friends, I know somewhat similar statements, or exactly similar statements, were made by Russian officials before UK and France began launching their cruise missiles, Storm Shadow and Scalp PG, to strike deep into Russian territory, before US began launching its HIMARS and ATACMS missiles to strike deep into Russian territory. I know there was similar statements from Russian officials that this will mean these countries are engaged directly and Russia will take action against their military and facilities, and this never happened, right? This just never happened. There was no retaliatory strike on British military assets, on French military assets, on US military assets, and therefore, most likely, German leadership or leadership of NATO member states are thinking that they can use whatever force they want against Russia. Moscow would not retaliate. Most likely, that's what their calculus is, right? And that's why I was skeptical about these restraint policies, because eventually this restraint may embolden Western ruling class so much so that they might actually provoke not just next level of escalation, but even a nuclear exchange between NATO and Russia, right? Because they are just too delusional now. They began believing in their own propaganda, right? And they are just too delusional and therefore extremely dangerous. And it's at this point, it is only a matter of potentially days, really. And we will see long-range strikes deep into Russian territory with the German Taurus missiles too. And I remind you, dear friends, that Germany also asked US for Typhoon launchers that will allow Berlin, for example, or will allow NATO to strike deep into Russian territory with Tomahawk missiles that have a significantly more longer range than Taurus cruise missiles do, right? Taurus has a range of 500 plus kilometers. There are reports that US may transfer JSSM cruise missiles that in some variations have a range from 800 to 1,000 kilometers. And now Merz is asking for Typhoon launchers for Tomahawk missiles, and these launchers can send missile up to 2,000 kilometers distance. So this is a big escalation. This is a big deal for sure. And you tell me, dear friends, would this escalation happen if Russia attacked, destroyed UK's and France's military facilities when UK and France began launching Storm Shadow and Scalp PG missiles to strike deep into Russian territory? Would we face this level of escalation when our enemies in Western leadership are talking about deep strikes to Russia in thousands of kilometers, actually? Would we face this level of escalation if Russia targeted US military installations when US militaries and intelligence launched HIMARS and ATACMS missiles? I'm quite sure we would not face this level of escalation. And that's why restraint, on one hand, yes, it is necessary someone to be adult in the room, and the Russian leadership clearly demonstrates on daily basis that it's them that are adults in this room. But on the other hand, this restraint, unfortunately, where you are dealing with their psychopaths that Western elites are, this restraint has been seen by your enemies, by our enemies, as a weakness of Russia, and they are, they're constantly escalating, and we are now in a situation when they are openly talking about deep strikes into Russian territory for 1,000 and 2,000 kilometers. By the way, that's what these Typhoon launchers will allow them to do. So, yes, I mean. We are on the edge, by the way. We are on the edge of some massive scale escalation, right? Western elites are threatening with these deep strikes. Western militaries are threatening to wipe out Russian regions. I mean, this crazy talk and the actions, by the way, they already are conducting long-range strikes deep into Russia, isn't it? With Storm Shadow, with ATACMS, with Scalp PG and HIMARS and so on, right? And all these crazy actions and crazy talks eventually will most likely trigger direct clashes between Russia and NATO, and only God knows what is going to happen after that. Either all of us will die in a full-scale nuclear exchange, or I don't know, man. I don't know. Direct, I mean, full-scale direct clashes between Russia and NATO are gonna be end of humanity, man, right? And I find it difficult to believe that it is a possibility that there will be clashes on a lower scale. I mean, local scale clashes. Yet again, Russia cannot allow itself to be engaged in a fight with NATO only with conventional weapons, because we are in disadvantageous position. We have to use all the force we have to eliminate our enemies, right? And that means the nuclear exchange, by the way. So that's where we are, by the way. Western elites are clearly pushing this world towards World War III, hot phase of the World War III, full-scale nuclear war. On the matter of Western escalation, I can give you this news that Germany and UK signed military pact citing Russia as a strategic threat. Yeah, they are not hiding, by the way. They are preparing to escalate this conflict, and because of this restraint policy of Russian leadership, thanks to which maybe we all are still alive, right? If who can give us a guarantee that if Russian leadership did not exercise this restraint, we would not be dead by now? Can anybody give us such guarantee? No. So therefore, I mean, this is very difficult situation that we are in, right? On one hand, thanks to restraint policy of the Russian Federation, we are still alive on this planet. But on the other hand, due to these restraint policies, Western so-called elites are so emboldened, by the way. They become so delusional that they are openly talking about targeting, obliterating Russian regions, targeting Russian capital, Moscow, Russian northern capital, St. Petersburg, to conduct deep strikes into Russia for thousands of kilometers. This is crazy, man. This is crazy. And unfortunately, I see no much room left for Russian leadership to continue this constant exercise of restraint. At one point, they will have to demonstrate force to bring these Western so-called elites to their senses. What do you think, dear friends? And on this topic of escalation, I give you also this news that UK, France, and Germany have military plans ready for Ukraine, according to British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And he said that they are ready to deploy so-called peacekeepers on air, sea, and the land. So this so-called coalition of willing, by the way, continues to push. London was a bit quiet for a couple of weeks, especially after London leader attacks on Russian nuclear triad when the Russian bombers were targeted, right? London was keeping quiet. Probably they were expecting Russian retaliation, which never came, right? And now Starmer is beginning to talk again, right? He's beginning to talk crap again. And, he's threatening, by the way. He's threatening us that they're going to deploy forces in air, sea, and their land. Okay, bring it on, and then we will see how those forces will go back to that island. Most likely either in a body box, or they will be just obliterated or incinerated, and there will be nothing to send back. That's the fate of British troops, French troops, and German troops that would dare to attack Russia. We will obliterate them. We will literally incinerate those freaking animals, man. That's how it is. And I hope we will incinerate Western elites too, by the way. I really hope we will incinerate Western ruling class, because I said many, many times before that Western so-called elites are existential threat for humanity. And someone have to put those rabid animals to sleep. And maybe that someone will be Russia. We are close to that point anyways, right? RIA Novosti is also reporting that, the Russian Foreign Ministry stated that Russia has the right to use weapons against those helping Kiev, the Foreign Ministry stated. So Moscow believes it has the right to use weapons against military facilities of the countries that allow Kiev to strike deep into Russia. With their weapons, Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, stated, and yet again, these kind of statements, yes, of course, Russia has a right to defend itself. Of course, right? But these kind of statements, these kind of warnings have been issued so many times before. Then at this point, unfortunately, hardly anybody in the West pays attention to it, right? They don't. They just don't care what kind of warnings Russia is issuing, and it is risky. It is dangerous because West is underestimating Russia, and therefore they might actually trigger full-scale war. But yet again, this restraint, it's like double-edged sword, isn't it? On one hand, thanks to these restraint policies, as I already said, by the way, maybe we all are still alive, thanks to exactly that restraint that Russian leadership is demonstrating. But on the other hand, because of this constant restraint, look at their level of craziness in the collective West countries, by the way. Look what kind of statements they are making. Because they clearly began believing in their own propaganda that Russia is a paper tiger, Russian army is a paper tiger, Russia will never use no force against NATO, Russia will not do this and not do that. And when they believe in this nonsense, they might actually, go ahead and escalate towards the level when Russian leadership will have no option but to retaliate, right? But right now, the statement of Russian Foreign Ministry that Moscow believes it has a right to use weapons against the military facilities of countries that are engaged in these strikes on Russia. Yes, statement is understandable, but on the other hand, nobody believes that Russia will retaliate. That's what's happening, right? And by the way, also on topic of this escalation from the West against Russia, press spokesman of the White House, Lewitt, was asked about this 50-day ultimatum of Trump and what Washington gonna do about it when these 50 days expire. And she said that there will be very stiff tariffs and secondary sanctions on Russia. And she's believing at least that it's gonna be on such a level of such painful tariffs or the secondary sanctions that it will damage Russian economy big time. And delusional people, isn't it? They already imposed up to 40,000 sanctions, and they are still talking about sanctions. By the way, okay, man. What is the point to talk to these people, man? They already imposed 40,000 sanctions, right? 30,000 plus. And they're still talking about sanctions, man. But of course, after 50 days, by the way, I don't care, and I don't think anybody cares about these threats of sanctions and tariffs and so on. Okay, impose the 1,000% tariffs, by the way, who cares? But what I'm afraid is because of this crazy level of because of the level of craziness among Western elites, because of this delusional takes that Russia is a paper tiger and they can do anything with impunity. After these 50 days, by the way, we might actually see large-scale long-range strikes on Russia with all sorts of missiles that NATO has, right? Maybe they will go ahead even with their preemptive nuclear strikes on Russia. At this point, I would not rule out anything, by the way, because we are dealing with their psychopaths, right? Western world is controlled by psychopaths. So when this is the case, you should expect anything, right? And that's what my worry is, that after these 50 days, NATO, under leadership of US, are gonna go ahead and conduct massive long-range strikes on Russia, potentially even with their nukes. Can you rule out such possibility completely, 100%? I don't think so. I cannot. And that's extremely dangerous, isn't it? That's what worries me. Otherwise, all these threats with the sanctions and tariffs and that kind of stuff, who cares, man? Bring it if you want to. You're going to damage your economy more than any other economy, right? So it is what it is, man. That's why people are laughing at this point. Even Westerners, by the way, even Western propaganda outlets are struggling now to keep it serious, to keep serious face when they are talking about sanctions, because they know 30,000 plus sanctions was imposed and you did not manage to do much, right? So why you think you're going to impose another, I don't know, 100, 200, 500,000 sanctions and it's going to change anything? It's crazy, man. But meanwhile, dear friends, Trump orders release of Epstein transcripts. Is kind of backing down, but not completely yet. So US President Donald Trump has promised to release more information after criticism of his administration's handling of their sex trafficking case involved the late financier Jeffrey Epstein, reached a tipping point. And by the way, Trump is engaged in some damage control now, isn't it? Probably someone did explain to him that his take was extremely mistaken and wrong and damaging, right? For not just for him personally, but to Republican Party, for America First movement, for US basically, right? And he is kind of engaged in a damage control. He was saying for a couple of days now that, well, Pam Bondi should release whatever files she will think is viable or trustworthy or something like that. And now this information, this is damage control. But point is that who gonna believe now anything that Pam Bondi or whomever will release? It's gonna be heavily redacted files, right? Or even made up files. At this point, I don't think there is anybody in US really, I mean, who truly believes anything that comes out from White House or from Trump's administration. I mean, we have many members of our community from US, right? And dear friends, please share your take. Do you, I mean, truthfully, just say truthfully, do you really believe anything that comes out of White House? And if you do, how? How? I mean, so therefore, damage is done, by the way. Trump is finished. I'm quite sure about it. And at some point, I don't know how long it will take, months, 2, 3 months, 5 months, but at some point, probably Trump will either resign or he will be impeached. He will be removed from office, by the way. Maybe this 25th amendment or something. There is some legislative opportunity to remove him from office, to remove any president from office if president is jeopardized, right? Or if president is not fit to lead, right, to do the job, and one way or another. But I think it's only a couple of months time, and Trump gonna be removed, and J.D. Vance gonna take office. This is only where Republicans and American traditionalists, American conservatives might have any chances to continue fight to reclaim their own country. If they would not remove Trump from office, if they would not build new administration, then well, they have lost US forever in that case, because I have not seen these traditionalists in US being disunited and defective, by the way, as it was the case during the elections, right? And now this group is severely divided, isn't it? And all because of the crazy antics of the Trump and his administration, right? So better Trump resign and allow J.D. Vance to take over and unite American traditionalists again. Otherwise, they would not even have a theoretical chance to reclaim their own country ever again, ever. RT is also reporting that, well, Brazil's president, by the way, clearly had enough of Trump, and he's not shying away to say what he thinks. And, well, he criticized Trump. He stated that, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has pushed back against the US President Donald Trump's announcement of sweeping 50% tariffs on imports from from their country, vowing to answer their measure and defend their interest of his people. Dear friends, I have high blood pressure at this point, I guess, and I'm barely managing to read. So sorry if I'm a bit slow, but I'm gonna end. I'm gonna go all the way with this stream, dear friends. At least with news segment. Just a couple of news left. In an interview with the CNN on Thursday, Lula said he was surprised both by the content and the moment of Trump's threats, which was delivered via the later posted on Truth Social last week. basically Lula is saying that Trump is not an emperor of this world and should behave adequately. He is a president of US and should act as a one, right? Also, dear friends, let me give you this news that Georgia is considers joining Chinese CIPC, aimed the risks of being disconnected from the SWIFT. So, because globalists, by the way, because Western ruling class failed to orchestrate successfully regime change in Georgia in last couple of years, they are trying to bully now Georgian government big time, by the way. They are threatening that Georgia will be switched, take off from their SWIFT. One more demonstration that Western financial and the banking system is just weaponized, by the way, like beyond their imagination, right? And understandably so, Georgian government is looking for ways to continue business, right? Continue trade, and they are exploring possibilities of cooperating with the Chinese system. So the National Bank of Georgia is discussing the possibility of cooperation with the Chinese cross-border interbank payment system, CIPC. Georgia's National Bank reported after a meeting between its head, Natia Turnava, and the CIPC president, Fu Yang, in Tbilisi. So I think this is important news, especially because this news once again demonstrates how important it is to have alternative financial and the banking system in this world, and this true alternative for whole world, by the way, should come from BRICS. BRICS is in a position to build this system, and certain steps being made in this direction, but we are lagging behind, man. We should be much faster, right? Because once this system is in place, once alternative financial and the banking system is in place, what will be the point for Western ruling class to continue terrorizing countries worldwide or the businesses worldwide with these threats that they're gonna switch, turn them off from SWIFT, or some other sanctions gonna be exercised? There will be no point, isn't it? Because all the countries, all the businesses will have alternative, and they will diversify their financial flows, right? We need these alternatives, by the way. We need it, but unfortunately, BRICS is being very slow on this regard. TASS news agency is also reporting that EU ambassadors agree on 18th package of sanctions against Russia. Well, Slovakia blocked this package several times, and I don't know why, but Slovakian Prime Minister said that Slovakia is unable to do it again. Why? Due to pressure, increased pressure from Brussels, or maybe there is some internal rules that you can veto certain decision only so many times, and then it will be adopted anyways, or I don't know what is happening. Why Slovakia cannot veto this 18th package again? But well, on the level of ambassadors, this 18th package is being agreed, and I guess maybe next week, probably this 18th package will be introduced. Yet again, we don't care. I mean, you might conduct some social study, by the way. Go on the street and ask first 100 people what they think about EU's 18th package of sanctions, and they will tell you, I mean, 99%, by the way, will tell you that they don't think about EU's 18th package of sanctions or use any package of sanctions whatsoever, because this is true, by the way. We don't think about it. We don't care about it, right? we know how to deal with all these sanctions, right? That's how it is. But nevertheless, European bureaucrats, these unelected bureaucrats, still believe that these sanctions matter, and they still believe that they're gonna bully Russia to submission or something, and they will continue. They will introduce 18th package next week, potentially 19th package maybe in the first half of August, and 20th package towards the end of August. And I mean, this clown show, by the way, this freak show gonna continue. Western so-called elites not gonna stop, man. No. Right? Also interesting news, dear friends, that, well, Bloomberg, Western propaganda outlet, right? No one can say that Bloomberg is a pro-Russian media. It is not, right? And Bloomberg is acknowledging that Russia is beating inflation, right? I was reporting about it, by the way, many times in my previous updates that, well, central bank seems like is happy where things are heading in regards to inflation, which is being kept in check, by the way. And therefore, reports are now and speculations on the internet that soon central bank, maybe towards the end of this month, central bank will already drop by 2 points, by the way, at least 2 points interest rate from 20 to 18, and this process will continue to the end of this year, and eventually towards December, interest rate might be on a level from 14, 15, 16 maybe, but I mean from 12 to, let's say, 15, somewhere around that, which is a big difference, isn't it, from current 20. But nevertheless, let's go through this news. The central bank has proven their effectiveness of its methods of fighting inflation, as the rate of price growth in Russia in June noticeably slowed. This opinion was expressed by the Bloomberg agency in their article devoted to Russian economic success. So, okay, by the way, okay, inflation is under double digits, by the way, on annual terms. As their publication noticed, all through their annual inflation rate remains at 9%, which is under the double digits. It's not bad, which significantly exceeds their target of 4%. At the same time, the growth in the prices at the moment corresponds to their intent target indicator. So annual inflation might be at 9 point because relatively high inflation in the beginning of the year, right, in previous months. But currently inflation is around target, which is a 4%, right? And eventually towards the end of the year, annual inflation rate probably will be around 7%, right? 6, 7, and next year probably 4% target will be reached. But nevertheless, I mean, it is interesting, isn't it, that even Bloomberg, by the way, Western propaganda outlet, is acknowledging that, well, despite everything that collective West has thrown at Russia, Russian economy is doing quite okay. And dear friends, I'm gonna end this live stream with this quite interesting, funny news, I will say, because allegedly Russia intends to be there to host the Olympic Games again when the global political climate permits. Sports Minister Mikhail Degtyaryov has stated, and I don't know, dear friends, was he joking about it or was he serious? I hope he was joking, because what Olympics, man? Are you kidding me? What Olympics? What you call Olympics, man? That garbage that people saw in Paris? That is the Olympics? And you want to be part of that craziness and sickness? No, thanks, no, man. We don't need no freaking Olympics here, right? And we should not call that gathering of the psychos as an Olympic, man. Olympics Games. You want to build something for true athletes? Go ahead and do it. There is bricks, right, in place. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, many other organizations, Arab League, African Union, right? Union in Latin America. Let's build some alternative, true alternative to this so-called Olympics, because come on, man, come on, it's embarrassing what this so-called Olympics has become, and why would you even think about hosting an event for that cringe organization that International Olympic Committee has become? Come on. So okay, I'm gonna end news segment, dear friends, on that. as I said, I'm barely managing to keep focus on something. That's what high pressure does, right? And so, okay, dear friends, the new segment is finished. Was there any super chat? Dear friends, there was no super chat, but there was a donation from Robert, 90. $92.92, $93. Thank you very much, Robert, for your support. And there is a comment: Trump is a liar. Russia should never believe a word he says. I agree with you, Robert, 100%. Thank you very much for your generous support, generous donation, and I completely agree with you. Trump cannot be trusted, not by Russia, not by anybody. I don't think even Trump's diehard supporters, by the way, would be able to trust him unconditionally. I mean, he destroyed himself. I don't know what kind of blackmail he's experiencing and from whom, from Israeli secret services or from globalists or from neocons or from whom. But I mean, it definitely seems like something happened to him, right? He never really acted too adequately, even during his first presidential terms, right? He always had some antiques, but I mean, nothing like we are seeing right now. And because his act is really deranged, that makes me think that he's been blackmailed big time. What other explanation can be there? I don't know. And once again, Robert, thank you very much for your generous donation. And I'm scrolling now, dear friends. I will try to do community chat, although I'm going to be a bit slow because, again, I don't know, maybe weather is changing again or something. And there is a blood pressure is messing with me now. But, I can still read, so... as always, dear friends, I will scroll now in chat, and whenever I see capital Q, hopefully I will spot it. And Arsener Electric is eclectic. Sorry, Arsener Eclectic is commenting or asking: does Slovakia have former territories they would like to regain in Western Ukraine, like Poland, Hungary, and Romania? I mean, yes, Slovakia might have a claim, by the way, because I remind you, dear friends, that after First World War, Transcarpathia region was given to Czechoslovakia, right? And it was basically part of Slovakia. And then this territory was taken from Czechoslovakia and given to this creation of the Bolsheviks, right? This creation of Bolsheviks in the name of Ukraine. So yes, technically speaking, Slovakia might have a claim on parts of Transcarpathia, let's say, not in its entirety, but on parts of Transcarpathia, definitely. And not just Slovakia, by the way, but even Bulgaria might have some claims. I mean, Hungary, Poland, and Romania will definitely have a claim. Slovakia possibly will have a claim, and maybe even Bulgaria, by the way. So it's it's a very complex landscape there on terms of historical borders and that kind of stuff. So yes, I mean, Transcarpathia was taken from Slovakia, right? Although originally it was taken from Hungary and given to Czechoslovakia. So Bratislava definitely might have a claim, by the way, on parts of Western Ukraine, 100%. And they can justify it. I mean, it's not going to be empty claim. They will have arguments to justify this claim. Sorry if I miss your question, dear friends. I'm scrolling now on StreamYard. Don Zugar is commenting, Levan, are you aware there is a city in California called Sebastopol? This part of California was settled by the Ruskies. We want the Ruskies to take California back, my friend. Don Zugar, I was not aware about Sevastopol. Maybe I have heard about it sometime in the past, but it's not fresh in my memory. So thank you for sharing this information. But what I do remember is that there is a fort even nowadays, remains of the forts in California, isn't it? That was a Russian fort, right? And it's a tourist destination, I believe, at this point. So there was a Russian presence, by the way, in California too. Yes, for sure, right? Not as much as in Alaska, of course, but nevertheless, there was a Russian presence in California. And when it comes to historical ties, by the way, I mean, Russia and US has ties since the creation of US, even before that, one might argue, right? During their struggle for independence, Russia was one of the few countries, together with France and a few others, that were actually providing some support and assistance to resistance movement, right, of Americans. And during the Civil War, by the way, Russia was also supporting Confederates or legit government, let's say, right? And this support might play key role to end the civil war in a way it ended, which quite effectively saved the United States, right, as we knew it. Otherwise, we might have like a couple of countries on U.S. territory right now, isn't it? Couple of English-speaking or countries, English, Spanish-speaking countries, or as it is case in many areas worldwide, by the way. Take a look at Australia and take a look at the New Zealand. I mean, two English-speaking countries that are not one country, right? It's two countries. In Africa, by the way, in so many neighboring countries that due to Western British occupation, colonization, have English language as their official language, right? So I know about Russian historical Russian presence in California, and well, as I said many times before, by the way, if we are objective, I mean, can you tell me even a single reason why should Russia and US be hostile? I don't think you can. I cannot for sure, because I don't see no reason why our country should be hostile, by the way. We should be allies. Really, we should be allies, man. But unfortunately, US society lost control over their country, and US is being used as an enforcer by all sorts of criminal groups, by the way, globalists, Zionists, neocons, and so on, for decades and decades, while completely ignoring strategical interests of the US itself and US citizens, right? Maybe someday Americans will manage to reclaim their country. Hopefully they will. But, you know, Once again, dear friends, sorry if I miss your question. I mean, Nidish Kumar is commenting Olympics is not good for economy, and I have to agree. When last time Olympics actually was profitable? I mean, some might argue that when Russia hosted the Winter Olympics, by the way, there was a huge infrastructure projects that was built, right, in Krasnoyar. Ань, как называется Красная долина или поляна, или там в Сочи, где Олимпийские игры что были? No, there was a significant infrastructure projects, by the way, in Sochi and in the mountainside, and the majority of the infrastructure is working. So, Krasnaya Polyana. Yeah. So I believe majority of the infrastructure is operational. So it was not abandoned, as it is the case in many countries, right? When some stuff is built for Olympics and then no one needs this stuff, and it's abandoned. So for Russia, I will say last Olympics that we hosted, Winter Olympics, was a success because yet again, infrastructure is still operational. So, people can use it. Okay, great. But in general, I agree with you that Olympics are no longer something that will brings you profit, right? And no longer before, by the way, decades earlier, I mean, some could argue that, it's about prestige. It's not necessarily about financial profits, right? It's about infrastructure. It's about prestige and stuff. And okay, in the past, this argument would work, but now, no, because what prestige, by the way? Have you seen what was happening in France? I mean, total disgrace, right? Total disgrace, by the way. I don't want anything like that anywhere close to Russia, by the way. It's not up to me, of course, right? There are people who will make decisions, but come on, man. This so-called Olympics become total disgrace, by the way, right? And I feel sorry for athletes, by the way, because they are training whole life, right, to become Olympics medalist, and probably they are disgusted too with what Olympics have become, and that's why maybe it is time for this world to create some true alternative, because I would not call it Olympics no more, man. This International Olympic Committee is a total disgrace. Question one author of the Huffmans who moved from Texas to Russia. Bob Hope is asking. I'm not sure. I know that there is many families that are moving from the Western countries to Russia. Many of them, I know it because many of them have channels, by the way, on YouTube, and I'm subscribed, right? But Hoffmans, I don't know. I don't know who you are talking about. So sorry, Bob. I see your question, but I cannot answer because I just don't know who these Hoffmans are. But if they move to Russia, great. It's difficult stuff, by the way. Migration to other countries, it's always difficult stuff. You have to deal with the bureaucracy, by the way, and bureaucracy is never, to deal with bureaucracy is never great stuff, isn't it? Maybe Russian bureaucracy not as bad as bureaucracy in California, for example, US state, or in Germany, by the way, which is famous for crazy bureaucracy, right? There is some legends, by the way, about German bureaucracy. So maybe in Russia, bureaucracy is much lighter. And because many services being digitized, by the way, probably Russian bureaucracy now is much better than most of European countries, or the most of the countries in the West, right? Potentially, because Gosuslugi, we have such a feature as a Gosuslugi, by the way, does makes your life significantly easier, by the way, when you have to deal with bureaucratic stuff. But nevertheless, I mean, migration into other country, by the way, is very difficult stuff. And from what I observing, one of the most difficult obstacles that migrants are facing is language. It's not bureaucracy, by the way. It's not nothing like that. They can deal with that, but to learn language is it takes time, right? And you need to learn language to integrate, right, in society. And yes, I mean that's Russian language is for some people, by the way, and not for me, obviously, but for some people is a bit difficult to learn. I don't know why, man. I mean, I cannot say when and how I learned Russian language. Probably I was learning Georgian and Russian simultaneously, right? Uh, it was Soviet Union period, so probably that was the case. But to me, Russian language was never difficult. By the way, it's a beautiful language, but for migrants, it is difficult to learn. Some say Chinese are most difficult language to learn. Probably it is. I don't know a single word in Chinese, by the way. And that's if you are planning to migrate to Russia, best recommendation I can have is to begin studying language as soon as you can, even before you start doing some documentation to move to Russia, because it will take time. Also, a question. Nidish Kumar is asking, Levan, how do you identify if someone comes from West, not a part of their intel? Levan, how do you identify if someone comes from West, not a part of their intel? I don't know, by the way. This is a question for Russian counterintelligence services, isn't it? I mean, probably they know how to identify who is foreign intel, who is not. I don't know how they do it, but there will be some background check, right? And when background check is happening, and when in your story everything is adding up, right? Then okay, right? That means you are saying the truth, I guess, and that's about it, man. But probably, I mean, these schools all over the world, by the way, schools that prepare staff for counterintelligence services, they have some methodology how to work in that particular case. I don't know what that methodology is, but they should know how to figure it out. And I guess this is it for. I see. Sorry to if I miss your questions, dear friends. Oh, I can see a little better now. I'm yeah, I'm blood pressure. At some point, I was struggling to read, you know, when it was a news segment. Now it's a Q&A part, so community would not be angry at me if I miss some question. But during the news segment, I began experiencing this blood pressure stuff and struggled to keep focus. Okay, dear friends, this is it, I guess, for now. Thank you all for your attention and support. Have a wonderful day and take care. Bye for now.